right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. It's great to see you. I'm glad that you made it. Listen, if you're going to be a cybersecurity practitioner, whether it's offensive, defensive, doesn't matter. It helps to understand what your network looks like, where the endpoints are, what protocols are in place, what's coming, what's going. And, it goes well beyond asset management, but it's vitally important. And this is at the heart of what cyber cartography is. Now, it's a role per se, and we're going to get into it with our expert Ricky Tan today, who does a million things. I am so excited to have him, but we're going to get into it. We're going to understand it at a deeper level today and give you some interesting takeaways on ways that you might be able to look forward, as a potential avenue and position, or things that can help complement your existing skill set and help you do your job better. Now, really quick before we get into it, I just want to set the stage for how amazing Ricky is. Guy's got a million cybersecurity certifications, including a couple or a bunch of GAC ones. Intrusion analyst, specialty, incident handler. So he's got a lot of that blue side experience. He was military trained, so we're going to hear a little bit about that today. He's an entrepreneur, so he's hustling and understands all that world. He's a cyber cartographer, obviously, and he is an amazing YouTube content creator. Listen, I know a thing or two about creating content on YouTube, and he's got a video with over 1.5 million views on the top 5 skills to get into cybersecurity. Very, very inspiring. So I'm so excited to talk to Ricky, and I hope you guys are too. Now, before we get into it, I want to thank you. Obviously, we're going to be having a raffle today for a 6-month Try Hack Me subscription. So you're going to want to stick around with that. The sound effects are working, so I hate to let some of you down with my manual sound effects. If you do have a question and you're new here, you don't know the protocol, drop a Q in front of the question in chat so I know that it's for me or for Ricky, and I will be able to facilitate that conversation. All right, guys, I'm looking forward to it. Let's bring in Ricky. Whoop. Ricky.
Hey, guys.
Ricky, hold on. There we go. I'm sorry, man. I don't know if it glitched for you guys, but I'm clicking the button and nothing's happening. This is what happens with software-based production panels. How are you, Ricky?
Good, doing great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm excellent, man. Now that we got that little production snafu out of the way. So yeah, I appreciate you being here. I said a whole bunch of amazing stuff about you. I'm sure we're going to touch on all of it. But before we get into it, since the whole point of this episode is cyber cartography, and it's a term that really no one is using, at least in the circles I run around in, and I love cybersecurity. Can you break it down and start with what is cyber cartography, and then let's start peeling the onion back on it?
Yeah, for sure. And Gerald, just thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity. I served in the military doing a lot of cyber operations work. Most of my time was spent in network reconnaissance and analysis. I worked both on the offense and defensive side of things. Now, I really won't get into the nitty-gritty of what happened there, but cyber cartography, you think about it, it's no different than that in the physical world. Whether it's land, air, sea, space, it's all really intuitive, right? You can just see it in your head. But when it comes to our networks, the only way we can see it is really in our heads. You have to look at a dashboard or a command line with the matrix printed all over it, and then you have to do some training and learn how to read technical language to be able to understand what's there, what's talking to each other. But people collaborate visually. So when you're doing something really high stakes, maybe you're on somebody else's network and you shouldn't be there, or you're defending your own, you've really got to know what's around you, how everything is connected. And somebody's got to do that job. It's kind of painful, but super valuable. If you look back in history, right? Napoleon, he had a treasure chest full of maps that always traveled with him. And they were some of his most prized possessions. It was super useful for planning and battle decisions. And in the early days of America, people didn't know how big it was. And when the French sold the Louisiana territories to the USA, it turned out to be almost a third of the country. So Jefferson, the president at the time, he commissioned the Lewis and Clark expedition to establish a presence in those new territories before the Europeans could get there. So there was a lot of geographic cartography involved, a lot of mapping, sketches, documenting plant and animal life. And they went all the way from Ohio to Oregon and back in about 3 years. Now, on a network, it doesn't take 3 years to map out. Well, depends on how complicated your network is. But that's in a nutshell kind of what cartography is. Now, when it comes to actually the technical side of things, it's not as simple as just running nmap, right? Because you have to understand there's many layers to a network. There's their physical layers, like where are things physically in my facility? How are they cabled up, right? You got your cable diagrams. Okay, next layer up, where are the data flows happening, right? If you think of all your switch topologies, right? What about the routing topologies? Where are my routers? How are packets being forwarded in a network? If you have any VPN tunnels, if you have any malicious tunnels like SSH or DNS or some malwares tunneling traffic, right, through your network, that's a very different map than your cable diagram. And then also all the protocols that are actually flowing on the network, those also have their own conversations. I think I wrote a SANS paper like a year or two ago talking about using something like Maltego to graph out all of those protocol flows from Zeek logs. And it makes it just so much easier to figure out what's happening, because visual patterns drive human intuition. And it's so much easier to spot anomalies and come up with hypotheses when you can actually interact with a picture of the problem and communicate that to somebody else.
Yeah, it makes me think of John Strand's RITA tool, where it's easy to see beaconing, like a C2 beaconing agent on a victim computer visually, but if you were just looking at logs, it wouldn't be so obvious. Now, one thing that you said was it's incredibly painful to do this work. Can you elaborate? Like, why is it so painful?
Yeah, part of the reason why anything's painful in cybersecurity, the fact that you have to be in a dark room that's air conditioned and you don't get enough vitamin D, first world problems, is that you might not have the tools, right, to automate things and to do it at scale. And so carpal tunnel is a real thing. If you type too much the wrong way or you click the wrong way, those repetitive tasks, like nobody's going to manually try to process, gigabytes of logs, right? A single line at a time in rows in a spreadsheet. That's why we write tools and scripts to automate that. But when it comes to mapping things, there really isn't any good way to do it other than in diagramming software or Visio or PowerPoint. And so you might spend, a dozen or so clicks just to position something correctly. And if suddenly new assets pop up on the network, then you got to rearrange everything else. It's kind of it's not easy to actually produce the map, because the network's changing all the time. It's not like you're a geographer. The world, the Earth doesn't change that much, in the span of a year.
Yeah, I mean, it is a really interesting point. And for those who haven't worked in the industry much, you're expected to keep up-to-date diagrams. Mostly the networking team is kind of responsible for doing that. But if you've ever worked anywhere, you ask for a network diagram and it's got like a timestamp from, more than 6 months ago. And it's at only one of the levels that Ricky mentioned, right? It's just the wiring diagram, or it's just the data flows. And even that, it's just the big pieces, right? The big routers. It's none of this extra additional stuff. So, I mean, I guess my question is, like, is cyber cartography essentially a role unto itself? Because usually managing those network diagrams at any layer is an additional responsibility that's kind of outside the scope of the main function of a network engineer, for example.
Yeah, so far I've only seen it be, unless you're in a very large team, a well-resourced team, like if you're in a military or intelligence organization, you might have analysts whose sole job is to keep your maps up to date. And that's what people did in the old days before Google Maps, is you had cartographers go around and keep up-to-date sketches of the battlefield. And that's what people did to fight battles, right? In the old days. And now it's more of a role, that role is more of a function or a skill that
Hmm.
some people just have to do. Like if you're a pen tester, maybe raise your hand if you ever done the whole napkin sketching thing where you're running your InMap and you start, drawing it out on a piece of paper, and then you eventually go to the whiteboard. And in cybersecurity, we love whiteboards, right?
Hmm.
Because it helps us offload what's in our brain somewhere else. So because we only have so much working memory at any moment to think through problems, and having a picture somewhere where we can go back and reference to is super helpful. And so drawing on whiteboards, if anybody's had their whiteboard erased or if they had to redraw something, we all know that pain.
Yeah, exactly. And if you find something else, all of a sudden, like all your endpoints are like, 2 inches wide. And then all of a sudden you start squeezing in like 1/4 inch wide ones because there's a whole bunch more that you didn't know about. It's so frustrating. So when you, I guess, what tools are like, how are people who, do it, albeit a smaller group of people worldwide that do this job, like, are we fools because we're using Visio to do this, and obviously not keeping it up to date? Like, what kind of tools, what kind of techniques? I mean, is there automation involved?
Yeah, a lot of it is custom tooling, because Visio only gets you so far, and something like any diagramming tool. So there's a lot of scripting and coding involved, that if you want trying to ingest data and turn that into something that's intelligible or helps automate some of the heavy lifting, and then maybe you spit out the asset information that you hand to someone to add to the master map, and
Hmm.
so it, I, there really isn't any good tool out there that can. There's like link analysis tools like Maltego that can help. There's lucid charts, Glyphy,
Hmm.
drawing by hand. It's that's the problem, really. um,
Yeah. Well, and keeping it up to date. Again, I really feel like anything that is kind of an additional responsibility outside the main, what you think is your main focus, your main responsibility, will always be kind of dashed to the side or pushed to the back burner, and maybe annually updated. And I would think in cyber cartography that you would need to keep your what's the frequency of updates? Like, what cadence are you doing with these networks diagrams? Or I don't even know if you call them diagrams.
Yeah, I mean, your maps, if you can do it once a week, that's amazing, because there's just a lot. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's if most people, they don't even have a map, right? So just having it in the first place, even if it's not up to date, is pretty helpful.
Hmm.
And having it, you go through and regularly just make sure that things align to what your software is saying, and tells you. Like, you check with what your maybe you have some asset inventory software, maybe you have some kind of a uh, your scripts that are going and pulling devices that are on the network and their IP addresses and their information, and you dump that somewhere.
Hmm.
Um, and then you go back in your map and say, hey, is everything up to date? When you look at something like Log4Shell, Log4j, it really shows us how little visibility we have into our networks. Maybe you have an asset inventory, right, of all the software and hardware out there. And if you're really high speed, maybe you even have a bill of materials for all the libraries that are running on your network. But how do you actually do planning and make decisions just off an inventory, right? You really need context and to see how things are arranged and arrayed out. If you're doing uh, defense, whether you're monitoring or security architecture, you don't have that map with spatial context. It's really hard to know what some IP or MAC address corresponds to when you're looking at it in your SIM, right? Like, forget AI, ML, negative 10-day defense. Like, what are we really doing to empower the human, right, by innovating on the interface that we're using to make decisions, right? We spend so much time just reading logs and building tools to process those logs into other logs that are easier to understand. But then we're just still reading logs, right? And so maybe you do have an automated tool, right, that scans your network, or it's agent based. It'll tell you devices that are there on a layer 2 level. It can tell you if it's a switch, router, or the server is up or down, but it's not going to show you, right, like that DNS tunnel going between them. So, there's your SolarWinds, your Spiceworks, Intermapper, IP switch,
Mm-hmm.
right? But those things, it is very much focused on the network and IT side of the house, and hasn't really caught up with the needs that cyber practitioners actually have. Like I've been on like a lot of networks, right? Whether it's in the military, special ops, working with cyber teams, I've seen it all, right? Like I've seen companies that sell spy tools, right, with no firewall or basic security get shut down with ransomware. I've seen an agency that runs a global supply chain powering the entire US military not have any network logging, right? Anyone can VPN in. And so it's just like people don't know their networks, right? Where are your critical assets? How are we protecting them? Like, where are the weak points? FireEye, SolarWinds, Verizon, even these companies are getting popped because of something sitting on the network they forgot about. And that's how hackers win, right? Through what you can't see is happening, what you don't know is there. But the thing is, Gerald, on the side of physical security, right, we've come a long ways, right? It's been probably thousands of years of human history that we've had physical security.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime we want to keep something safe, whether it's gold or top secret facilities, there's always a ton of visibility on what's going on because, and we invest a lot of money to see it. Right now we have cameras and drones, satellites, physical like warehouse inventories. And even for your health, right, at the micro level, right, doctors have X-ray, CT scans, MRIs. All these tools let them see deep inside of your body so they can do a better job. Versus compare that to the doctor's great granddad, who he only had a hacksaw and some whiskey. And if you think about something like Colonial Pipeline, it's basically what we do, right? We just kind of amputate that part of the network, right, to stop the bleeding or stop the disease, right? So, none of that exists in cybersecurity right now. And when it comes to enterprise security software, I mean, there's a lot of paywalls and sales demos that you have to go through, and that's why practitioners you end up building your own tools and methods instead.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things you said too is, obviously having poor cyber hygiene at the organization level, but where are your critical assets? And I don't want to go too far down this road, but like another challenge that I see is organizations. Like if you ask someone at an organization, what are the critical applications? You'll get a different answer depending on who you ask, right? They might all agree it's that like on one application, but you'll get a host of things, or where's your critical data? And, you know, first of all, even if they tell you the applications that they think are critical, to your point, Ricky, like it might not just be on one single database. This isn't like 1994 where it's an access database on Gene's computer, right? It's a much more complicated, involved system. One of the things that you said that got me thinking, so everything you have said so far got me positioned that cyber cartography was a defensive skill. But now you've said a couple of things that make me think it's offensive. So I guess, can you kind of talk about like the function or the role of cyber cartography in the context of offensive ops versus contrasted with the defensive ops?
Sure. And I love kung fu movies. I love The Matrix, all of that. And if you think about it, it's two sides of the same coin, right? If you know how to throw a punch, it can be defensive and offensive at the same time. So people forget that tools like Nmap were originally system administration tools for network troubleshooting purposes. And then we just repurposed it for offensive purposes to do scanning and recon, only you're doing it on other people's networks. And so if you apply offensive tools such as, a Metasploit or a Cobalt Strike, and you have a guy who's pen testing your own systems, that's kind of defensive in nature, or purple teaming, right? Where you're having this nice OODA loop that's driving your blue team. Now, if you take your blue team, right, methods of maybe tapping a network, monitoring, collecting logs, and really understanding everything that's happening and what are the patterns of life on the network, right, throughout for a day, for a week, for a month. What are all the users there? What are all the file types that are going across the wire? right? Who goes home or leaves work early? Where is the the SharePoint or the internal
Hmm.
portal that handles HR benefits and pay? If you know that as a defender, right, you can defend properly. But now imagine how useful it would be knowing that as an offense person, right, as an
Hmm.
attacker, right? You can now actually plan, right, a lot of really sophisticated operations based off of knowing the network really, really well. And so you don't want to be caught. So loud scanning everything, it's basically a no go for as a method. And so what do is you maybe have to collect some traffic, tap it silently wherever you are, and then analyze the traffic that's going across the network and reverse engineer the map. So offensive capacity, cyber cartography looks like that. And the guys who are hands on keyboard at the tip of the spear, right, running their tools, like they'll love you if you can provide them like that map that's actually useful.
That's really interesting the way you said it, because again, I'm not an offensive security practitioner. I dabble, right, like everybody else in the industry. But when I think of attacking, you get a foothold, maybe you elevate privileges, but then you're looking for the crown jewels. And I never once thought of the main network, gateway as a crown jewel. But it sounds like that's what you're saying. I mean, find the main point and then tap it passively. I mean, is that essentially what you're saying? Is that's almost a crown jewel for a cyber cartographer?
Yeah, I mean, if basically when you're doing any kind of reconnaissance in the real world, if you stand on your house, you're going to get a better picture on the roof than if you were down on the ground. The
Mm,
higher up you go, right, the more terrain you can see. Now, you might not be able to see as at a super granular level, like, hey, what, are there ants on the ground? But if you're flying, way up high in the sky, you can see a lot.
mhm,
And so in the network cyberspace, if you will, the high ground, if you will, it tends to be those assets that a lot of traffic traverses through.
mhm.
So like a domain controller, a core switch or core router, those types of things.
Hmm. Very, very interesting. I like it. So, on your YouTube channel, do you have any content or video? I mean, I've watched a couple of your videos. By the way, just as an aside, we can come back to this, but if you haven't seen Ricky's videos, and I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable, but the man has a gift for telling stories. I don't know if you like have been classically trained in storytelling or something like that, but your videos, it's like watching like something on like Discovery Channel or something like that. Like it's really well done, excellent B-roll. So if you haven't seen his channel, go to it. It's Cyberspatial on YouTube. In fact, let me just pull it up really quick because I want people to find this, Ricky, because it's such a valuable add to our community. So this is it right here, right? So if you haven't seen it, check it out. Look at this, 1.5 million views, no big deal. 500,000, no big deal, right? Like no big deal. So definitely check that out. So, but Ricky, are there any videos on your channel that associate with, asset management or cyber cartography or any of that type of work?
No, not really. I've kind of shied away from this topic because it kind of is alludes to a past that I just knew a lot about and didn't want to talk much about, but I do want to share it and bring it to light in a different way, kind of in the what we're doing. Maybe we could talk about that later.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Look at this. Like everybody in chats, loving it. Like I told them about cyberspatial just now, but apparently everybody's already subscribed. So we've got that going on. Definitely well done. So I guess are you comfortable talking about like what you're working on before I'd like to talk about some YouTube stuff too, but like
Yeah,
are you
yeah. I mean, we could do whatever order you want.
okay? Well, if that's okay with you, so I okay. What are you working on right now? Because I find it wildly fascinating and like a natural progression of kind of what we just identified as really awesome value, but difficult to do.
Okay, so So I got a buddy, right? He once told me, dude, I'm at a Fortune 50 company with every cyber software under the sun, but I end up using my whiteboard, the command line, and Excel because it lets me see things better.
Hmm.
And that's just heartbreaking for me sometimes, right? Because imagine you're going under surgery and then your doctor, you watch him like draw a stick figure of you on his whiteboard to use as a reference guide before putting you under the knife. Right.
Yeah, that's great to be the last thing you see before you pass out from the drugs. Yeah.
Imagine if people guarding gold vaults and secure facilities had to like type commands and read logs, filtering with grep or, rows on a spreadsheet just to know what was going on. And so, what we need in cybersecurity, I think, isn't really the next generation antivirus or analytics platform. And there's a lot of them because,
Hmm.
what people think their firewall does and what it actually does aren't the same thing. We've been really missing a way for people to visualize and describe and show others what's happening, in the digital environment, and hopefully we're putting an end to that. So for the past, I haven't been doing YouTube for quite a long time now, right? I took a sabbatical. I just disappeared. People are probably wondering like, where did Ricky go? Did he like just get abducted or kidnapped or something? I basically been in the dungeon in the lab, with my building a startup out of Cyberspatial, and co-founder. We have engineers, and what we're doing is we're building a network mapping tool that lets you take your network traffic, your logs, your configs, whatever it is you have, and just map it and build an interactive map in seconds. Right.
Wow.
Not just
Okay.
from layer one and up. So, we're talking about just everything, eventually being able to correlate everything from your facilities, right, all the way up to what's happening at the protocol level, right?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Like all sorts of questions are coming to my mind. Keep going. Keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah, we can fingerprint devices passively, build out multiple topologies, let you see them all on one screen, right? You'll be able to integrate this with your tools. So imagine you're in your Splunk, you see an IP address. Eventually, we're going to probably come out with a browser plugin. It'll highlight the IP address and it's in the map you built. And we can also detect over 4,000 protocols and applications. So, it's not just like, hey, this thing's HTTP. I'm talking about like Spotify, World of Warcraft,
Hmm.
specific VPN providers, and providing this to end user practitioners at a price point people can actually afford. So don't call us for a demo. Don't call us for a quote so we can figure out how much money your company makes. We're probably going to price it from, somewhere around free to $50 a month and up, right? Depending
Yeah.
on the utilization tier. So I'm really excited about it because for too long, we haven't had the right tools to do proper cartography and mapping. And, we're really trying to make this accessible for everyone. The mission of our, company is to make cyberspace easy for people to see. And now that involves all of the GRC people,
Hmm.
the C-suite, all the people who aren't technical, right? Your figurative, your proverbial generals, right? They can now actually make good decisions faster because they can actually see what you're talking about. Imagine all of the times you were just like, oh man, I just wish this dude could read the command line or wish he could understand what an IP address is, right?
Yeah.
But it's because they can't see it right in their heads, right? You have to show it to them. And so we're making that available.
So, okay, so a couple things here. Like you say in generals is such a perfect um, way for me to make the point that as soon as you start talking about it, right? My question is going to be like, what's the interface? Is it a fat client? Is it a SaaS-based product? How do you interact with it? But before you do that, as you're talking about it, I'm thinking of that scene from Star Wars where they R2D2 has stolen the blueprints and they show it to the rebels, and like the Death Star comes up and it's rotating, and then they have like here's the chute and the little where you drop the bomb. Like it's a three-dimensional picture of the system, right? I mean, it doesn't go into the level of detail, data flows and stuff like that, but like that's exactly what I think of. And the generals are making battle plans based on basically just looking at this 3D model of the Death Star, right? So it really is powerful at effectively communicating basically to a different audience. It's fantastic.
Yeah, we're looking to build the collaboration plane, right, for cybersecurity, where you have all these users and making it real time collaborative. Everybody who's working remotely can be on the same right sheet of paper.
Hmm.
Can be looking at the same whiteboard, but it's not a whiteboard.
Okay, so Ron Clark says yes, VR cybersec. I can't agree with Ron. Will there be a metaverse version of the tool that I can get in on?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're doing 2.5D. We'll eventually get there to the 3D, right? We're kind of doing the crawl, walk, run first, kind of progression where let's make sure that we get things stable. We can support a lot of users and
Hmm.
actually make it useful for people. But then eventually it's going to be yeah. I think there's a lot of different directions we can actually take it.
Yeah, I think Disney will probably get there first with the VR thing of like life of a packet. You put on the thing, and then you experience being a packet flying across the network. But people are lighting up with this project, Ricky. Raspberry Pi here wants to see an example. Josh is saying that if when it becomes available, he and I will make a video. So when I guess people are clamoring for it. When is it available?
Yeah, so I mean, we are looking to launch a private beta sometime in the spring of this year.
Well, we're all family here, Ricky. What does private beta mean? I mean,
Okay, so we're still ironing out a lot of the back end infrastructure stuff, and
mhm,
we don't want to. I mean, I'm fine. If things are crashing and people still want to use it, that's just a good thing. It means we built something valuable. But
mhm.
I want to make sure that we iron out a lot of the bugs, that we're able to really get some user feedback from some trusted insiders or friends and family first. When you're gonna go out for get dressed up to go out to town or something, you ask your wife or you ask whoever, hey, how do I look, right?
Yeah,
Just make sure you don't look all crazy. And
the soft opening. Yeah.
yeah, and so what I'm really excited about is we're going to be able to do this completely passively, right? There's zero install, zero download, so there's zero friction. Because imagine how hard it is trying to put an appliance on your network or to get authorization to, there's devices you can't scan because you're going to like knock them offline, or people just don't want you scanning sensitive systems. And so, there's no agents, no scanning. Really, we're looking to make it like, hey, this is your cybersecurity camera that lets you start operating at cyber speed, not whiteboard speed.
I love it. Brian Peak wants me to get a beta key and add it to the raffles that we do every show. That's awesome. Okay, so I understand that you want to, have the proverbial soft opening even before you like let some of the public get beta going, because I agree with you. I don't know if this is your thinking, but you don't want it to be kind of the first taste to be kind of different than what the final product's going to be, and then people have kind of a misconception of what the product is and how reliable it is. So when it does become more open, like open beta, if you will, how could people, because people might be watching this a month from now, 2 months from now, like how could someone find out if the beta is open for them for public consumption?
Yeah, really easy. What you can do, you just go to the product's called Teloseer, stands for telemetry seer. If
Okay.
you go to teloseer.com, just put in your name, you get a sign up form. Um, Basically, it's like an engineer and me. We have access to to the stuff. If you want to put in a burner email, sure, right? And we're not going to sell your data or do anything bad with it, right? And we're really focused on security as well, on our systems. So for every single account, we actually will have people's maps in its own database. So we're not putting everybody's stuff in one database. And so we're looking at a lot of different ways to make sure that, hey, this is basically the keys to the kingdom, right? Your
Hmm.
network maps, and that we're doing the right thing and making sure we're securing stuff hardcore without breaking functionality and convenience for end users.
Yeah, yeah. So with it zero touch, zero install, I mean, this might be patent pending or something, but how are you collecting the telemetry to build the picture?
Yeah, so I mean, we really have to rely on the users themselves to know where to collect data from. And a lot of
Okay.
people, they already have Zeek logs, they already have a tap point. You can tap off your computer. If you have a switch, you can do a span port, tap off of there. And so that's really the best way to do it
Hmm.
is having just providing us whatever you have. Eventually, we'll be supporting additional data types. So we can do Cisco router configs, switch configs. Down the road, we want to support anything you have. Like we can do in-map scans. We want to be able to just hey and we actually don't keep any of the data you give to us because it's too much storage. So we just process it, help you map things out, and then
Hmm.
we just throw it away.
Yeah, that is awesome. And if you don't have Zeek in your environment, it might be, this might be the push that gets you to get Zeek in your environment because it is it's fantastic telemetry. It's log files for security professionals. That's what Zeek is, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we'll be able to eventually support all sorts of different types of logs. And even if you don't have Zeek or Snore or like some IDS, we'll probably be running some sensors to process your network traffic for you, generate those alerts, and
Hmm.
then animate them in your map, so you don't have to read them anymore. You can just have a scrubbable timeline that is like, oh, what happened over the weekend? Let me go back 2 days and scrub through for all the alerts, and you can see them flash up in your map.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you, I do have a question. Ross White Chinnery did put a question in, but before we get to that, I wanted to ask you, so like you have my telemetry and I've got this vision in my mind of like the Death Star plans holographically presented. But like now what? I mean, is it the intention for reference for people to say like, let me see your current network diagram, or is the purpose and intent of this tool to see if bad stuff is happening and be able to identify like lateral movement visually and stuff like that? Like once you have
Yeah.
what it is that you do, what do you do with it?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the ultimate goal is to be your visual sim, the thing that you spend the most time in. We want to own every single monitor in the SOC, right? And if you don't have a second monitor, you're going to get a second monitor. You're going to want to just to have it full screen. We're going to want it so that we can, whatever tools you're using, you can actually see those identifiers get highlighted. If you're using a sim, if you're using, Rita, whatever, we want to play nice with everyone. So your map becomes you can brain dump onto it. You don't have to think about things anymore. You can actually see what's connected to what and where they are. And be able to animate those that telemetry is also going to be really valuable. Where essentially the technology, we've developed kind of when I was in the military. We've been able to just having a map that you can look at and having a lot of this stuff automated for you. We've been able to turn months into days, right? 3 months of work by a full team. We had people with, good technology or something visual to work
Hmm.
with, be able to do more in just 3 days than what takes a full team 3 months. So you'll be able to save a ton of time. It's going to be easy. You're going to be able to brief your boss at a glance, right?
Hmm.
Imagine trying to get budget or funding approved. Hey, sir, so this is what happened. Let me show you. And this is why we need money. So we have to invest here. And also, if you have vendors, you show them, hey, where are we going to put this appliance? Or why do we need this appliance? So
Hmm.
now you can actually make smart decisions because you have something that's updated, that's beautiful, that you can point to with your finger. Because right now there's nothing you can point to with your finger besides your terminal.
Yeah, I love the idea of a visual sim. I put it in chat. I shuddered. All the diagrams, everything in a knock or a sock that's visual is for guests and executives to walk by and see donut charts. That looks cool. Like that, no SOC analyst is looking at the eye candy to do their job. But a visual sim, that is not only cool looking, but incredibly useful. Like I love that idea, Ricky. I'm really excited. Like this kind of sounds like I don't want to go overboard, but it sounds kind of like paradigm shifting. Like no one's really doing anything like this. It's just kind of a rehash of the same thing with like new front end, new bells and whistles. Nothing really too interesting like this. So and Micah Babinski says he's used Control F. He's Control F his way through a lot of Excel workbooks. This is a great use case. So cool. Yeah. So let me I want to drop the link in there one more time. It's Teloseer, right? For people to go to. Okay. We may have crashed your site, Ricky.
Oh no.
So just saying. But you'll get a lot of people going in there. Anything else you want to say about Teloseer before I bring a question up from chat?
No, I mean, just if the sites crash, I'll go call up one of the engineers.
Oh no, I was being playful. Like,
okay.
That we sent so many people at once to DOS it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm super excited. Hey, it's not going to be pretty, it's going to be pretty, but it's going to be ugly at the same time. If you know what I'm saying. When Twitch first came out, it was called Justin TV. And I don't know if anybody remembers what that looked like.
Not at all.
So we're moving fast. It's a work in progress. And so having all of, the support of the community is going to be really, really helpful for us, because we're not looking to sell to, big businesses, big companies yet, right? We're trying to really empower the practitioner, right? And focus on empowering that end user. Because a lot of the stuff that they sell commercially, they weren't built with end users or practitioners in mind. They were really built with, whatever the big companies needs, not to make your life better and not to make your life easier. And we want to kind of change that, because, at the end of the day, it's the practitioner that makes the difference, right? That carries the network right on their back, kind of like Atlas.
Exactly. And giving us the tools to do it better, not just better, but faster, is huge value. All right. So let's do the drawing really quickly. So real quick, guys, the score. To enter the raffle for a 6-month Try Hack Me subscription, drop #squad into chat. And special shout out to, I saw a bunch of you join the squad just today. Thank you, Michelle, Jess Bishop. I saw you, Nicholas, a whole bunch of people. So drop #squad to enter the raffle for a 6-month Try Hack Me. Now, while that's queuing up, Ricky, question for you. Ross asks, he struggles with transposing concepts from the command line to a diagram, vice versa. What kind of methodology should he be learning to help with this?
Yeah, if you can script, if you can take that command line output and convert it into like a format like GraphML, or just anything that can be ingested into like a tool that's more suited for visualization purposes, whether it's in Maltego or Visio. Even if it's turning those things into a CSV that you can import and ingest, that's going to kind of help you manage command line output. But hopefully once we launch, you won't have to do that. So we'll do it for you. That's
awesome. All right. So while everybody's queuing up on there, so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about YouTube, right? I know you haven't done YouTube in a while, but with 1 million videos on how, like, the top skills in cybersecurity, and so many people in the Simply Cyber community are trying to break in, or they're in and they're trying to level up their career. I'm sure 1 million people reached out to you and you had a bunch of discussions and conversations. What kind of key takeaways do you have when you're talking to people about the top skills to learn, or the best way to approach it?
Yeah, everybody learns differently, and so this won't apply for everyone. But I think having natural curiosity and kind of a exploratory mindset, where you can see different, because when you read Wikipedia, right, if you just go look up IP address, it's going to take you down a rabbit hole through all these different other topics that's related to an IP address. You start anywhere on Wikipedia and you can go down the rabbit hole, but it's really, really deep in cybersecurity. So having a natural curiosity to just go learn what things are, right? Like we talked about taxonomy, cartography. There's also that taxonomy side of things, right? Where, like, Lewis and Clark, it wasn't just drawing sketches and mapping. It was like, oh, what is this animal? I've never seen it before.
Hmm.
Let me come up with a name or a system for describing these plants, and really kind of being scientific about it. And so as a new learner, if you approach things with that mindset of kind of really having a methodical way to understand, okay, MPLS, what is this? It's just 4 letters to me. Let me go figure out, that concept. And maybe I only get like an inch deep. Okay, let me pivot laterally and move on to something else and not just get stuck where I am. Because over time, as you get re-exposed to a lot of these concepts over and over, it's going to make more and more sense, right? Like I didn't understand everything, you know, on my first go or second go or 10th go, right? It really takes a lot of years of just repeated exposure where you see, I mean, I'm still like having a new understanding or mental shift of what an IP address is like today, right? Like I'm constantly learning those like simple primitives that you just say, oh yeah, I got it. It's easy. I, I think it was like, Stephen Hawking, or, he has a very different mental image of what the word gravity means
Hmm.
than what I think gravity means. Right. And being able to have that mental image and explain it to your mother, right. Or explain it to someone who doesn't who doesn't know computers very well.
Hmm.
That's kind of where you're trying to get to in your learning process. Um, I'm actually working on a series called The Apprentice, where I actually have taken in an apprentice, and I've been coaching and tutoring him for a while now in cybersecurity, and we're going to do a series about it. A lot of these videos, it's kind of like teaching you. It's very teacher centric and content centric, where it's like the teacher's going to teach you this content, and you're just going to absorb it. Rather with The Apprentice, what I'm doing is, once we talk about some whatever topics he's curious about, and then I assign him assignments to go learn. For instance, he got phished at work. I think his he's a geologist, by the way, so
Hmm.
not cybersecurity background at all. He got phished at work. His manager forwarded him in a phishing email. He clicked on it, and then we ended up having to help him change every single email and password because he was reusing the same password for everything. And then so that opens up the door about like, okay, what's phishing? How do I fish? What are all the what's the psychology behind it? Et
Hmm.
cetera, et cetera. And I gave him the assignment of he had to send a phishing email to me, right? And fish me. And I won't spoil kind of the details, but he got me really good.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So is this going to be on Cyberspatial YouTube channel, this series, or?
Yeah, it's still in production, but we're gonna put the series out there. That way, you can actually we can actually see or show like what that dynamic between the master and the apprentice kind of looks like. And it's not just, I'm not a master, by the way. I really want to bring in other people from other fields who are real experts in their domains to
Yeah.
kind of chime in, right? Help collaborate on this project. So
Oh,
if anyone is interested in topics they'd like to see, or they know people who want to kind of get involved, yeah, just get in touch. Be happy to chat.
dude, that is awesome. That's going to be like, obviously your YouTube content. I've already like given you a back rub here about how good it is. This is a cool concept. I really excited about it. To see it. So, like, do you have a rough idea of when it might publish?
Uh,
Like summer, fall?
yeah, I mean, I'm trying to also shoot for sometime in the spring.
Okay.
And so yeah, I am multi-tracking a lot of different projects at once, and so
Well, yeah, I
it's
mean,
yeah.
you're disrupting the cybersecurity industry, like also. So, it's kind of hard. It is. You are a busy man. So, wow. Okay, definitely going to check that out. Let's draw the winner for the Try Hack Me 6 month uh, um, membership here. Good luck to everybody. Hopefully, you got it in. I know some of you don't enter because you already have Try Hack Me's, and that's fine. All right, let's get ready to go. Finally, got the drum roll too. Good luck to everybody. All right, Randy Williams. Very nice. Hopefully, you guys heard the sound effects today. Did that come through, Ricky?
Yep.
All
Loud and
right, all
clear.
right. I've had some problems on stream a couple of weeks ago. They didn't come through, and I had to do it all just analog with my voice, and it was quite embarrassing. So, Randy, connect with me on Discord, and I will get you what you need in order to claim that prize. So, thank you. So Ricky, continuing on the conversation of some very nice words from Saloni.
Thank
Continuing
you.
on the conversation about what's important and what's not. Another kind of hot topic that's always asked is certifications, right? You, as I said in the intro, you've got CISP, you've got like 7 or 8 GX certs of various things along the way. Professionally, what is your take, I guess, on certifications for new people who are getting in, for current people who are already in?
Yeah, I think certifications are valuable in the sense that it's like a shot of structured knowledge, right? Put in front of you, and it's ready to go, and it's there for you to process and consume. And it can fill you in on a lot of like background stuff that you might not have known about. And so at the same time, books can do that too. So maybe hit up your library and just read a bunch of books and start practicing some things on your own. Read the internet, read blogs, read books, familiarize yourself with those concepts. And then when you spend the money on the certification, it's going to be a lot of review, and you're going to actually have a really good internalization process at that point. You're not going to go into some cert completely cold. You retain about 20% of it, and
Mm-hmm.
then you get the certification. Now, there's people who they go after the certifications because they're trying to look at getting a job, and I understand that's kind of how the industry is set up currently, which I have my own feelings about that. But it's I don't hate on certifications, but for me, it's been very much a kind of a background, a supplemental learning process where people take a lot of information that's unstructured, they structure it in a curriculum or a certification, and then provide it to you.
Okay. Brendan has a question. I'd be curious on your take around which is better, research masters or taught masters. Now he's from the UK, so I'm not sure if that's one for one, but I think it might be practical versus theoretical kind of research as far as applicability in a cybersecurity career.
Yeah, I'm opinionated.
Well,
I
that's what we
like
do here. Yeah.
I like things that are practical in nature and very pragmatic. I like trial and error. I did well in school, but I wasn't ever really I didn't really like theory. A lot of times you spend a lot of you interact with a lot of professors that they've spent a career teaching, or maybe they do a lot of research and they haven't been out in the field, right, getting their boots dirty, slinging code, right, in the cold
Mm-hmm.
server room. And there's a lot of wisdom and goodness that comes out of praxis, right, out of real world stuff that I think is really hard to emulate inside of a purely academic environment. And so it's good to maybe bounce back between the two or do it at the same time. And but I would prefer something more applied and practical.
Yeah, John Strand said this on stream last week or 2 weeks ago. Adjunct faculty, if you can, seek out courses with adjunct faculty because they basically work in practice and they're just teaching as an additional function, right? No disrespect against career academics because they are doing some research and stuff like that. But to your point, our industry changes so much, so frequently that like you said, having dealt with an end user who, does things that end users do or shadow IT or any of that, it's the reality. You're never going to see that in a textbook.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. So another question from Carrie here. Let me, would you like, well, he wants to know if you like Raspberry Pis, the little guys there.
Yeah, I mean,
You
if
want,
you, Raspberry Pi is a great cheap way to start. You
Mhm.
don't have to invest a ton in a in a beefy computer or a server to start practicing.
Mhm.
If you need a server or something, but if you do have a laptop already, some VMs can work just as well. If you're trying to focus more on the hardware side of things, actually, because some people they need to see it, touch it, feel it. It's like, okay, this is the Ethernet port, and this is how this specific Ethernet port interacts with the kernel, right? If I
Mhm.
put Linux or Debian on my Raspberry Pi, there's a much closer, like more intimate relationship. Whereas if you get a black shiny box, right, you have no idea what it looks like on the inside. Sometimes it's hard for people to learn that way.
Yeah, I think it's an awesome platform. I'm constantly overwriting it with different, labs. Like it's a vulnerability scanner this week. I'm about to make a Kali Dropbox next week. So it's definitely good. Ricky, we're almost up at time here, but I want to give you an opportunity to take the floor, share whatever you'd like with our community today, and let you know that I sincerely appreciate you coming on, spending time talking to us about really a really interesting kind of forward thinking concept of a visual sim basically at the end of the day. So I sincerely appreciate it.
Yeah. Hey, I just always feel really humbled by a lot of the people out there that, um, we're able to reach, right? Including you, Gerald, and just
Hmm.
be, it takes a lot of time to kind of produce content and to do stuff, but that just pales in comparison to just the amount of people we're able to touch and reach. And I just want to thank everybody, right, for even giving us your time in watching, right, in participating and engaging, because you could be doing something else right now, and the fact that you choose to take part of your day to just listen in, it's really, really humbling, and I want to just say thank you. um, Sometimes I feel guilty about not being as consistent with producing content. I get a lot of anxiety with going on to YouTube, or just feeling, oh man, because I tend not to be a very good multitasker. I can only focus on one thing at a time. But I promise I'm going to be coming back online hopefully soon. And I just always want to bring something really incredible and remarkable to share with you guys. And so sign up at Teloseer.com if you haven't done so already. You're going to be you're going to want to be on the launch list. I think we're pretty generous with who we're going to bring on the beta. So sign up today.
Yeah, well, you'll see my email address stuck in there right after this. So consider it +1 at least. So thank you so much, Ricky. I'll send you off to the green room now.
Awesome. Thank
All
you.
right. Yeah, of course. All right, everybody. So you know the routine. We had an awesome guest. Definitely check out that Teloseer. I'm going to get on that. If you get on it, then we can both be on it, and then we can talk in Discord about our experiences and how awesome it is. Wanted to tease next week's episode. Guys, we are bringing on a dear friend of mine, Erica McDuffie. She's a director over at a very large professional services company. She crushes it. And she is an expert in GRC, governance, risk, compliance. And I know that we throw love to the GRC people because that's what I love. So she's going to come in. We're going to talk her about how to dominate the GRC space, whether it's skills, whether it's approach, whether it's conversations, ways to navigate the space, compliance standards to care about, ones to focus on, ones not to waste your time on. Right? Erica is going to be joining us, and I'm super, super excited. So you're not going to want to miss that, right? You can hit the reminder, you can hit the bell, whatever you want. Just you're not going to want to miss this one. Okay. That's going to do it for this week's episode of Simply Cyber. Thank you all so much. I saw a couple questions at the end that we didn't have time for. Sincerely, unfortunate that we couldn't. So if you come over to Discord and drop it in, we will definitely answer your questions over there. That's going to do it for this week's episode, everybody. Until next time, stay secure.